So one of the things I would like to incorporate more in my music production on a day-to-day basis is modular systems. To be honest, I've always been interested in modular systems because they're immensely powerful, but I've never found a system that really works for me. There's obviously been VCV Rack, which is a free, easy to get into system, but it's never integrated too well within the DAW. And now there's VCV Rack 2, which works, but at a certain point it just becomes very CPU intensive, so it's not the greatest solution. Then there's obviously physical modular, which I just don't have the resources for right now. I cannot justify actually buying a modular system. But I have found something that is particularly cool with a few really cool things that allow you to just get a taste of modular systems within Ableton itself. So that's what I want to show you today. Hello, I quickly wanted to say if you want to support this channel, you can do so by listening to my music on Spotify or Apple Music, or by going to my website and looking at some of my products. There are even free ones that you can download really easily. Alternatively, if you're interested in private lessons, I also provide those, and all the information for that you can also find on my website. So here we are within the project. I have a quick kick and bass setup, and then I have a synth sound that I made, and you can already see some of the things that we're using here from the modular system. There's a lot more that I'm going to explain, but it's a bit of a mess. But first, I just want you to let you listen to what we're actually creating. Now keep in mind that for all of the modulations and automations you seem to hear, we are actually using these modular systems that we can see down here below. These are actually making all the changes to the sound. So we can hear that we have created this cool synth sound, but that it's always continuously generating and continuously changing without actual repetition, which is obviously something that modular systems are very, very good at. So let's look at the pack that I've used to achieve this. So I'm going to go in here and I'm going to go into Max. We can see this DarkInteger's Modpack, and we can see a whole bunch of different devices which we can use to generate control voltages, randomness. We have an ADSR, stuff like that. We have an LFO, this is fader, a whole bunch of different like remappers and stuff like that. And then we also have MIDI versions of the same thing. These can just be thrown before a synth instead of behind it. If you want stuff in front of the synth, you can do that so that you have it on this side of the synth itself instead of on this side. It just changes your workflow, so there's no real difference between the two. But as you can see, it's actually a very big pack in terms of all of the different things that we have. So as I said, I've just discovered this. I have only ever used it to create this one patch, but I just want to quickly do like a little overview and give you the opportunity to dive into it yourself. And I might use this in the future in other tutorials to actually, you know, get a little bit more crazy, get a little bit more in depth in specific devices and stuff like that. For now, I just want a general overview of what it's like to just set up a synth system like this. Obviously from the point of view of somebody who's just getting into this stuff. So let's just start by looking what every single device is doing within this synth patch. So I want to start off right here at the start, and what we can see is we have this first envelope follower. Now the reason why this is here is because I wanted this before all of the other devices, mainly before the delay, because I just want this to follow the envelope of directly what is coming out of the synth. So to show you what signal we're actually getting from this envelope follower, I've mapped its output to the input of the scope wide here, which is just a scope kind of device that actually shows you the signal over time. And the way this works is that we have a whole bunch of different controls. I don't want to get too deep into it right now, but what it will do is it will look at the volume of the incoming signal and it will transform that into some kind of controllable signal that you can use to modulate things. In this case, it's also modulating, let's see, I think it is the wet here. It's a little bit hard to see because this thing here is so small. Let's look. Yeah, we can see this wet CHO, which I think stands for chorus. So the wetness of the chorus is being modulated by the actual volume of the sound itself. So that's one cool way to modulate things. It just kind of acts like a gate in this regard. but we can use the up and the down to kind of control it, see how fast it opens and how fast it closes. We can set multiply to multiply the value so that we have an actual usable value that goes up as far as we want it to. And we can use the offset to set an offset. If we wanted to start from below 0 or above 0, we can do that. In this case, it's set to 0.28. So we can see that it's already higher than 0, which is this green line down here. So next I want to talk about the step mapper, which I'm using to modulate the filter cutoff. Now what this does is it takes an input value provided to this input right here, which in this case we're using this LFO for, which just cycles through and goes up over time, and then obviously back down again, as you can see in the shape. And what it will do is it will map this input to one of these outputs depending on how far in the input you are. So this point here would be 0 and this point would be 1, and it just generally goes from 0 to 1 depending on the input. Obviously we're just ramping up, but you can use any shape for that. We could do like a sine wave and it would go up and down and up and down throughout these values and then have that as an output. Now a cool thing to note for all of these devices is that it works kind of similarly to how, for example, the LFO works. So if we look at the LFO mapping, we can map this to, for example, here, and then we can set minimum and maximum values, which is very useful. And if we look here, we have the same thing. We have a minimum and a maximum value, which we can set, and therefore we can kind of control how far this automation goes. Now, it might seem like a very limiting system in the sense that this step mapper can only map to one single parameter, and you might want to have it mapped to multiple. So to fix that, we can use something called multi-multi. And we'll drag this right in here. And I actually want to use this to show you how you can actually look at different signals. So what we'll do is we'll take off this mapping and then map this to the input and then map that to the output here. And I just want to transfer these values over. So this is going to go to 0 and 100. And this will be 31 and then 82. I'm going to do the same for this one, 31 and 82. And I want to map this to input 1 so we can actually look at the signal that is being generated and sent to this filter cutoff. We could also look at the signal without it being limited by these parameters. So we could take this and put it to input 3. So now we have an idea of what the signal looks like when it's actually being limited by the values that we set in the min and the max, as well as what it looks like over the full maximum possibility that we have from 0% to 100%. So this is a good way if you're working on a patch to kind of debug and show what is going on within a patch very easily, just to understand what is happening to the actual control signals that you're sending around. Now here we come to this part of the chain, and what this is used for is we have these gates which just generate pulsating signals with certain divisions, which we can take and put into the input. I've used them all for probability inputs, which allows me to trigger certain events with a random probability. So as an example here, the output of this clock gate is going into the first input of this probability, which is then 50% likely to pass that signal on into this lane 1 here, which is going into input 1 of this or this ADSR. Unfortunately, it doesn't tell me which of the two it is, so it's a little bit hard to tell where the signal is actually flowing. And then that either takes the wavetable position and modulates it, or it goes into input 2 of this combiner, which then eventually ends up at the filter resonance. Now another very interesting idea here, what we can do is with these step mappers that we've seen before, is we can take a gate like this, so this clocked gate, and have then a probability calculation on it like this, and it goes into where you can see this rando, which stands obviously for random, which is actually this button, which is mappable. And what that will do, if I play it and you look at it, it will actually randomize all of the bins in here, which is very powerful. You can see it changes. So this allows us to continuously update the sequence and regenerate a different set of values that were used to actually modulate the things in our sequence. So that's all I wanted to show you for this video. If you find this kind of stuff interesting and you want to see me use this more and more and maybe dive a little bit deeper into this system, then I would love it to do that, obviously. But in order for me to do that, to see if you actually like it, I need to just know that you like it. The way you can do that is by leaving a like on the video and commenting that you want to see this more. For now, this was just a little bit of an introduction to get you curious on the idea. I also want to quickly mention that this isn't a sponsored video. The person that made these devices isn't sponsoring me to actually show these on my channel. The reason why I actually found these is because I was looking for a way to remap LFO modulations from the standard MaxForLive LFO, so that we have an input value and I can actually remap that so I can get different modulations from the same LFO basically. That was my original goal. And I just happened to find this whole list of devices and I thought it would make for an interesting video. So consider this video a piece for you to get inspired by and dive maybe into this kind of system or even a different modulation system. For now, this is going to be it. I hope you enjoyed and hope to see you in the next one. Bye bye.